The first question I'd love to ask is just why you chose to trust a random stranger to help you save your marriage.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I was having a little bit of a crisis where I had had a kind of a blow up with my wife where I was totally out of control and angry, this kind of thing. And this was a pattern that was happening, fortunately, not very often, maybe once or twice a year, but nevertheless, enough of an issue where it was, getting out of hand. And after that latest blowout, I literally, well, I should say, just I'll go back. The previous blowout that was really significant was about 2 years before that, after which I immediately got into therapy. And after I had this blowout, I realized that therapy did nothing because I was really back at square one. So the therapy didn't provide for me what I needed. And you guys, talk about that, and I completely agree. There's certain things you just won't get out of it. So this time I really was like in a frantic search of like what to do. I started looking stuff online, and I just somehow randomly came across a video of yours. And the video, it was a YouTube video, and it couldn't have been more than 2 minutes long. But I don't even remember exactly what you said in the video, but I heard that video and I was like, whoa, something important just happened. And I need to check out and see what's the source of information and what's going on here. So it was sort of a random find, and I started, watching a whole bunch of your videos, and then, eventually everything led to me registering for the course. And so it was just kind of an epiphany moment where I'm like, I think this is what I need.
Yeah, it's kind of called to you, just spoke to you, a certain part of you, and you're like, this is what I need. And a lot of guys have the same feeling. It's like it's not even illogical. It's just kind of like this is almost like like this makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I must have watched 100 videos that night, and yours stood out for whatever
Love that.
reason.
So you say this blowout. Can you elaborate more? Like what exactly happened? Did she say something that like triggered you to go seek help specifically, or was it from your end? You're like, wow, I need to fix this. Like, what actually caused you the inciting incident that caused you to actually like search for help?
Well, it was there was it was an angry outburst on my part relating to um, our finances and how
Got it.
she handles money versus how I handle money, and it didn't go well. And it was a recurring theme, and still is, but it was just a sense that I'd gone too far, and I'd had this unfortunately, I had this outburst in front of our kids and her parents. So it was like, okay, everybody was affected.
Yeah.
And I knew, I mean, without her really saying anything, I knew that this could be like one of those moments that leads to divorce. Even though she didn't say that specifically. But so in a sense, it was kind of a preemptive move because after listening to a lot of guys in the course, I realized I wasn't quite as far along in the ditch as they were, but I was heading there, um, and so I felt I needed to do something. So it wasn't her telling me to go do something; it was really me telling myself.
That's beautiful. And a lot of guys, unfortunately, they don't get to that point, and they they come in a little bit too late. But I'm glad that you were able to do that. And how long ago did you join the program?
I think it was in April of this year.
Okay, so a couple months, yeah, a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we'll kind of fast forward to where things are at now. What's been going on recently in the relationship?
Well, I mean, I would say overall relationships much more harmonious in many respects. Really, we haven't had any major fights or issues. We have our share of arguments, but they're civil. And I really have a feeling that well, number one, she completely has supported everything I've done in the course, and I've let her know here and there what I've been up to. But she sees a change in me, and she tells me so, and I feel much more confident in how to handle some of the issues that I just didn't have the right tools to handle before. And so there's a lot of bliss, I would say, right now in the marriage. I think we're doing really, really well, and um, I have a lot of optimism about the future.
That's beautiful. I mean, so there's a feeling of bliss and connection. On the outward, what is actually happening differently between you two that shows that you're in that feeling of bliss? Is there more physical connection? Is it like you guys are doing more activities together, or
Yeah, I would say there's definitely more physical connection, although that can still use some work, but it's come a long way. I would say, yeah, just our communication style. I think that she, as you can imagine, when we have the angry husband, there's typically a lot of fear and distrust, and I feel like that has dissipated almost completely, where I don't get the feeling that she's fearful, and that she's very loving and says kind things, and I say kind things back, and um, yeah, I mean, I think as far as us, I mean, our routine is not all that different. We have two relatively young kids, age 9 and 11, and we our marriage is such that I kind of do my things, she does her things, and then sometimes we do things together. But um, it's just a sense of mutual commitment, mutual trust. We're in it together. No one's going anywhere, and we're feeling good about where we're headed.
I love that. That's everything that most guys want. So I heard a couple of things that I want to dive into, but I'll start with this anger, right? So I feel like it seems to me you have a better control over blowouts and that part of you that usually gets angry. First question was would you agree with that statement? And secondly, how did you get to that place if you do agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely my number one issue. And I agree with the statement that I'm doing much better with it. I am much more vigilant about it, which is for number one, is I'm getting more aware earlier so I don't let things escalate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it, comes from kind of the stuff that you taught us, which is really about changing your mind frame as to what's going on in the other person's head, seeing the other person with more sympathy and empathy, trying to get their story. Um, and some of the meditation stuff really helps to sort of be meta aware of what's going on in your brain. And and giving most important thing I think is giving myself time and pause before making responses in the emotional state. Um, yeah, I mean, I really got a lot out of the whole masculine concept of really holding a frame. And there was an incident that happened where it wasn't too long after I started the program. It was maybe 2, 3 weeks after I started the program, and I don't even remember what the subject was, but she just decided to rip me a new one and
Mm-hmm.
just went after, all pushed all the buttons, and you're not good enough of this, and you're too much of that, and this, it's all the stuff that comes up, and I just stood there and I just, there was no response. I just like, okay, I'm hearing you. Okay, okay. And this went on for, I don't know, a good 10 minutes where she just was just pulling out all the stops. And, normally I'd just be defensive and this and that and logic and this and that. None of that. And it was kind of straight. So at the end of the 10 minutes, like, okay, well, I'm hearing you, And then she takes a big breath and like a sigh, and like, and then she's like, "Well, thanks for listening." You know, and that was it. It was like that's not how it usually goes, right? So she actually was somehow able to even appreciate my response as being different than the normal response, and she just had to get off my chest. And then it was like nothing happened. Like there was no residual after that, and so I knew at that point that something was different.
That is a beautiful example of how the man leads the relationship and how if you change your perception response yourself, then you will get a different response from her in the way she follows, right? And how when we talk about reaction, right? It's that's just a word, but really what it is, it's this idea that of decades for all the men of responding a certain way after something happens, and it's automatic. That's the reaction, right? And so cultivating that, first of all, that understanding that, okay, I need to stop reacting, and then understanding like what causes the reaction, the trigger. And then when you're actually in the battlefield, right, or you're in the game, it's like, oh, it's happening right now. We're in it, right? And so you're like, I think I'm gonna choose a different response. And then when you get that immediate feedback from her, that's what just like creates this ripple effect moving forward. And I love that you gave a perfect example of how that played out.
Yeah, again, in your curriculum, it's the idea of recognizing when this is a test.
Hmm.
And I never thought of it in that frame before. Like, oh, this is a test now. I'm being tested. And that really helps to reframe things when you think of things as a test and you just embrace it as that. And you want to pass the test. Like you want to pass the test. Like there's a motivation that you don't want to fail this test because you realize what's going on.
Yeah, and she's obviously poking the bear. She's seeing, are you the same guy that made me feel unsafe? Are you still the same guy? I'm gonna poke you to see if you have the same reaction. And then when you
Exactly.
go, it's like, oh, he is changing. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that's like
Yeah.
you're slowly building up this new image of that she has in you or in her mind, slowly, one break at a time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which allows her to feel safer.
Yeah. And the other thing that was really significant was, you know, the course as you designed it is very clever because you realize that what it's really about is not what you think it's about, right? It's really comes back to it's about you, right? And so I started doing a lot of the work there and started thinking about purpose and thinking about values and the important things of like going back into myself. And one of the things I decided to do at that time, not too long after that incident, was go and do a volunteer shift at Habitat for Humanity. And that's not something I ever did before, but I felt like this fits with my values, right? It's charity. I like working with my hands, feels good. It's also a chance for me to be social, and I have a little bit of social anxiety, so I'm pushing myself there. And she's like, you're gonna do what? Like I'm going to Habitat for Humanity. And then so I did. I did my shift. She's like, I'm so proud of you for doing that. That's like the most amazing thing. And like again, it was just one of those moments where she realized something different was happening, and I felt like something different was happening. I was disrupting the routine, and that that scored a lot of points for
Yeah.
sure.
But the thing is, in Lawrence, you didn't correct me if I'm mistaken, but you didn't do it for her approval. You did it because you wanted to do it.
That's right. I wasn't saying, "Oh, look at me go." Like I was just, just like you said in the beginning, I was just all about the work, and I wasn't trying to really even explain what I was doing or why I was doing it, or I wasn't um like we see a lot of the guys in the group, it's all about, hey, look at this. Look what's happening here. Don't you see how great I'm doing? So I wasn't really, I didn't buy into that. So I was really very much inwardly focused, and not trying to justify anything. And so that's where that came from. Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, that's beautiful as well. And it's because a lot of guys that would be listening would, they hear something like that, like, oh, I'm gonna go volunteer now, social media. It's like that worked for him. It's like, no, it's not the actual action, it's the place it came from that you were doing because you wanted to be more in line with your values that you were creating for yourself. And she sensed that because a woman can so intuitively
Right.
understand
You can
when
sniff it
you're
out.
doing it
Yeah.
for, yeah, so completely. So
Yeah, and I really did enjoy the experience. I'm definitely going to do more of that.
you're the second person today talked about volunteering. I think it's a sign that I should probably go do something. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah, I got to do more of that. And yeah, I mean, I think I've got, there's a lot of things I still need and want to do, really being focused on me. And I was talking to Carlos the other day about, what should I do going forward? Because I feel like I'm somewhat in a different basket than I was before, than a lot the other guys are in the basket of they're in crisis mode and I'm not.
Yeah,
But
of
that doesn't mean there's not work to be done.
course. Absolutely. So what would you say was, we talked about the emotional regulation, emotional control. What would you say is another powerful lesson that helped you get to where you're at now with her?
Um, well, I think the idea of I mean, there's quite a few things, but I would say um, really I'm trying, and I continue to try to embody the concept of the masculine, the divine masculine, not the toxic masculine, but the by not falling into the traps. I guess you could call them the nice guy traps, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That book. And so not, kind of holding my ground a little bit more and
Mm,
um saying, not always asking for permission to do everything and sort of saying, this is what I need to do tonight. So I'm going to do that. Hope it's okay. Being kind about it, but um as some of the painful stuff that I realized after doing some of this work is that I never really got this whole concept of the masculine. Like that was like totally new. And as I started rewinding my life and taking a look at that, I realized so many examples of really not embracing that and how it did not serve me well in relationships and other things. And so just handling conflict better, like I said, and being embracing the masculine side with more frequency.
yeah. And so, yeah, so much of this is, so many guys don't know what they don't know, right? How many people actually teach this stuff? And so when you finally understand like let's take the test, for example, through the masculine frame, right? Most guys will say, like, it's all through our, like, you listen to comedians and stuff. It's like, oh, my wife's jabbing at me, she's stabbing me, she's doing this. And that idea that is pretty much permeated through all of marriage in our society is like, oh, my wife's being the ball and chain, she's nagging at me, right? It's like, oh, it's just something you have to put up with. But when you see it through the different perspective, that she's actually seeking connection, that she's making sure you're the man that she fell in love with, and it's a
Mhm.
test to make sure that you're there so she can connect with you because she wants to, but she's doing it through this indirect kind of nature that women do. You're like, oh, it's a game to play, right? And I know how, and when you know how to respond to the frameworks of like agreeing, amplifying, being non-reactive, holding frame, all these things we teach, and then you get the reinforcement where she like softens up, it's like, oh my gosh, like that simple idea alone is palpable. And so the idea of this masculine frame that you just brought up to us is, there's so many components of it that we teach, right? There's like the leadership aspect, there is holding frame, it's like not being reactive, it is I mean, the leadership, like, have you also leaned into more leadership in the relationship with her as well?
Yeah, I would say so. I think a lot of it's very counterintuitive until
Mm.
you understand, like you said, uh, as the nice guy book says, it's like, giving her whatever she wants, whenever she wants, and agreeing with it. It seems like the right thing to do, but it actually is not. And my wife is a very headstrong kind of person who has very strong opinions and things, how she wants things to be, and she has quite a masculine quality to her in that sense, where she likes to be the leader, and so I'm learning how to gently, push against that without, giving her, without taking that away from her, because that makes her feel in control and she's a little bit OCD and this kind of thing.
Mm.
But that is like that's probably going to be a lifelong challenge, but that's kind of the is to do. almost the exact opposite of what you think you're supposed to do. It's like
Yeah.
you have to you have to push back and not say, okay, honey, okay, okay. Because I was very much like, the happy wife, happy life thing where, oh, whatever you want, it's all fine. I'll be over here.
Uh,
You take over, and like it doesn't work.
and just to elaborate on why that doesn't work is because for a woman to be with a man, the number one thing isn't love, it's respect. Right? She has to esteem and respect and see this man as his own whole individual man,
Mhm.
right? Complete without her, right? And as you know, a lot of men will put their wives on pedestals. They make her their god. Like, I'll do anything for her as long as she's happy. Like when she's unhappy, I'm destroyed. And that's because they tied up their self-worth into their wife. And this is why it is so important that you don't always forcibly disagree with her. A lot of guys take this concept, they're like, oh, I'm going to start arguing with my wife. I'm going to disagree with her. Just no, it's like you're two different people. You should naturally disagree because you're different people. It shouldn't have to be forced. But a lot of men, right? They'll take those moments where they're like, I don't agree with what she's saying, but I'm just gonna agree with her just so I can like move forward from this. But every time you do that, it's like a little stab against your soul. I don't want to be too dramatic here, but it really is. And she
Yeah.
feels that you're not being authentically who you are because your wife knows you almost better than you know yourself, right? And so she knows parts of you almost better than you do know yourself because it's like a shadow to you. So those moments where it goes against your values and she's purposely testing you to see if you actually disagree with her because that's actually she wants you to. That's what maintains respect, even if you go into conflict. Because a lot of men learn early on, myself included, conflict equals bad. Or if I'm going to fight, then they're going to leave me. Right. But a lot of times you have to relearn that no, conflict isn't a bad thing. In fact, it helps build the relationship. And so reframing conflict is a huge component of it as well.
Yeah, this is one of my major challenges because I still catch myself doing that. I catch myself not challenging something that she said and letting it slide when I feel inside probably that's not the right thing to do. So I'm catching myself doing that, and the goal for me is to be more comfortable with conflict. And I'm not concerned about conflict because I think she's going to leave me. I'm more concerned about conflict because I am concerned about how I'm going to react. And
Uh,
so my goal, my challenge is to face conflict and feel good about how I handled the situation, that I can walk away and said, okay, I took on the conflict. I knew the conflict was going to come because and I handled the conflict well, and I stood my ground on whatever value it was that I was holding up, without becoming overreactive.
yeah. And that's all of it in a nutshell. Absolutely. Lawrence, what would you say was the biggest win in this whole entire process for you?
The biggest win was honestly, it's a complete reframing of it. It was like my brain has been rewired in a different way to think about not only marriage and relationship, but my life. I have different thoughts and ideas that I didn't have before. It's like you gave me a toolkit to use for the rest of my life. You know, I read some of the, I'm into some of the Stoicism stuff that you guys are into, and just understanding what you can't change and not getting excited about stuff. Uh, a couple of days ago, a flight of mine got canceled. I was supposed to go to New York, didn't happen. The trip got canceled.
Mm.
Trip, like the world doesn't revolve around me. The
Yep.
plane had some sort of problem.
Yep.
Anyway, so the point is that I'm looking. I'm constantly sort of reevaluating my value system. What am I going to do in the future? How am I going to embrace the challenges, not run from the challenges, and use the toolkit to overcome some of the blocks that have occurred in my life and in my marriage.
Yeah. And I could see like when you were saying that, I felt a sense of like relaxation wash over me. And that just calls to the idea that when you're holding these ideas in your mind about letting go, not forcing, not controlling through state transference, but your wife feels that like I felt more relaxed by the you saying those things. So by embodying these beliefs, your wife feels more safe around you just by the new beliefs that you have, right? Because I felt that personally.
Yeah, 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 and like like we were saying, if you let her, she will draw you into the drama. She will draw you into the conflict. She will draw you into the emotions. And then you just got two emotional people. Like it doesn't work so well. Uh, and I list all kinds of things that she has about her friends and other things going on. And I look at everything through a different lens. It's not like I'm not trying to solve her problems. Just go ahead and talk about all the crazy people and the things that you don't like about other people. And your friends did this to you. And so again, it's like putting on a different set of glasses and just looking at things differently
Yeah.
and being not getting too drawn or sucked in.
One way to say this too, that's echoed in a lot of the concepts is, she wants to feel your strength. She wants to feel that masculine, you know, certainty and power because it's everything to her. It really is. And a lot of the times, the only way that she can feel that is to press up against you, right?
Mm,
How
yeah.
could she feel you if she doesn't press up against you? And
Yeah.
yeah, as men, we want to, well, why can't it always be soft? It's like, well,
Mm,
because life's not perfect, man. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, beautiful thing. One of the last questions I love to ask, Lawrence, is an interesting one. I always like to say, if you could go back a year from now and talk to yourself, like get in a time machine and give yourself a piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
Go back a year.
Yeah, about a year, and just give yourself a piece of advice you needed to hear.
Hmm. Yeah. I guess one piece of advice is don't take it too personally.
Can
It's not always
you expand on that for me? Expand that.
it's not always about you. Like you said, if you're able to get into the other person's brain a little bit, you'll find that most of the time it's not about you. There's something
Mhm.
else going on. It could be with my wife or someone else. Someone else has fear. Someone else has anxiety. Someone else has anger. Someone else has insecurity. Someone else has something going on. It's
Yeah,
probably not about you.
yeah,
You are proximate to that person, so they're going to go at you. But if you're able to really empathize in that way, then it cuts out a lot of the unnecessary conflict and reaction that you might give. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do when you're in the moment, but if you think it's not about you, it helps.
yeah. Not taking it personally. That's one of the four agreements in the book. The
Yeah,
you read that one.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that I really want to elaborate on that because it can confuse some people because a lot of times it does feel it's about, like it is like it's your behavior, but we can just make a distinction here. I did a video on paradoxes that we talk about, like things that are simultaneously true. And this one is it's about your behavior, right?
Hmm.
But it's not about you. And
Hmm.
it's separate your behavior from you when she attacks certain things that you do. You
Hmm.
don't feel like, oh, I'm not good enough, which a lot of guys feel. There's like a wound
Hmm.
there. It's like, oh, she's calling out this behavior that makes her feel unsafe. I can change my behavior. It's not, am I angry or do I experience anger? And I always like to
Yeah.
call out guys on that of like, you can say I'm an angry person or I experience anger. And when you separate yourself from the behavior, it's so much easier to overcome. You see? So like that's a beautiful statement about not taking
Yeah.
it personally about your own behavior.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also an aspect of um, sometimes it is directly a result of something you did or said, and sometimes what's coming at you sounds a little bit irrational
Mm,
and a little bit emotional, a little bit over the top, and I think that's when it's not all making kind of sense. I think that's when I go back to this as a test because someone's pushing against you for reasons that don't make a lot of sense sometimes. Sometimes it makes perfect sense. You did this and you deserve that. But sometimes it's about more than that, and it's